All right, Thompson to Clark here on a Monday. We're finally back in our Monday
Yes.
slot here. So there's baseball being played right now, but our stories that we're going to hit on today are not really related to what's going on the field. We had the JD Davis thing last week, and we're going to do another segment on that because as we were going through it, Brad had actually found some information about the clause and how the Giants could get rid of him. And it doesn't seem like they read that exactly to the letter of the clause. So we'll talk about that in our second segment. And then at the end, if we have time, we're going to go through roster stuff because opening days in 10 days or something like that.
Yeah, it's crazy. I mean, we're talking like major league games that count in the standings as we're recording this, like 48 hours plus from now with the Dodgers and Padres in Korea. So
yeah, it makes everything so weird when there's like a games
yeah.
that are played like a whole week before everyone else plays.
I'm not a fan only because the West Coast, we get screwed because it's a 3 a.m. start for us. Yeah, and the East Coast is great because you wake up and you have your coffee and you're like, oh, baseball game starts in a half hour because I get up at 5:30. So I'd be like, oh, great, 6 o'clock. But no. Yeah. Unless you live in Hawaii, then you can start it at midnight.
I think this is the hack as we get older here.
Yeah.
For sports fans, I think we'd all should just live in Hawaii.
There you go. Yeah, so, you get everything done early.
So yeah, so you vacation there every once and again. I've been there, and the games are on at like 2 o'clock in the afternoon, 4 o'clock in the afternoon, and you're done by dinner, and then you just go and do whatever you're gonna do for the rest of the night.
Like the best sushi in the world. I mean, you watch baseball, and then you go get the best sushi in the world in Hawaii with Mai Tai. I mean, I can't think of a better way.
We need to figure out how to retire there.
Yes.
That needs to be the place for us to retire. Once our kids are adults and they got their own thing, like we need to all move out to Hawaii.
Well, then, and we have them get fantastic paying jobs and then kick down to us because all of the money we spent on them. Isn't that how that works?
It should work that way.
It should, but
when my kids were growing up, I would always remind them, I'm like, just an update. $785,000 you are in debt. So better figure out how to start paying that.
I bet they totally paid attention to that too.
All right, let's talk about this Renel news. It was pretty frustrating to wake up to, I will admit.
Mm-hmm.
It was one of the first things I saw in the morning, and it was just like Renel and the Giants are no longer working together. And if you think about it, like that ballpark has never had another stadium announcer.
Right.
Renel has been there. She's been there as long as, Kruk and Kipe and, Mike Murphy, as far as I'm talking about the new park. And she's just such she's like a living statue in that place. And so to read the news that she's no longer with the ball club, like, what a punch in the gut to wake up to. And it's not only that, right? Like if all of the PR stuff was on the positive end, then the Renel thing, you're like, oh man, you maybe give the Giants a little bit of the benefit of the doubt. But with the Brandon Crawford thing, with the misunderstanding of really how to draw fans to the ballpark all over again, it seems just like they're just not paying attention. They don't have their eye on the ball as far as what makes people want to go to the park, what makes people want to be a fan. She is part of that. And so to see them, to see this not work out, it is pretty frustrating.
Yeah, I mean, you and I, we're old heads.
Yeah.
So Renel to us is KMEL, right? I mean, Renel is KMEL. She, for me, who didn't have cable, she is California Music Channel.
Yes.
I mean, her and Chewy. Remember Chewy
Gomez? Yeah, Chewy Gomez.
Chewy Gomez. So
I heard Chewy Gomez on the radio the other day.
Oh, really?
So
I'm glad he's still working.
I won't take long with this because this is a little bit of an aside. But the music, the hip hop music that was around when we were in our teens and like early 20s, that is now old school.
Yes, I know.
So Chewy Gomez is on one of like the old school hip hop stations. And when I think of old school hip hop,
Oh,
I think of like mid 80s, late 80s stuff. And it's
yeah.
like Ja Rule,
Oh.
Ja Rule,
Yeah,
old school hip
Ja Rule. Well, yeah, because when we think of classic hip hop, we think of King Sun. I mean, we think of like like EPMD. We think of
Exactly.
that's like old school hip hop. Yeah, yeah, I hear that. Like, I think I ask Apple Music sometimes to, I say, hey, play a classic hip hop station, and it starts out with like, I don't know, like you said, like Ja Rule, and I'm like,
Yeah.
no, man, I'm like, no, that's not classic old school hip
Yeah,
hop.
go older.
Yeah, but so she's the voice for us of that whole generation, driving around in our cars, bumping KMEL. And then when she got the gig, we were like, really? Like Renel from KMEL got the gig as the Giants announcer. And I wasn't fully on board because I was like, well, this is going to be different. Um, Sherry Davis was the voice before her at Candlestick from like 93 until 99.
Was she the very first female PA announcer?
She was in Major League Baseball for sure.
Yeah.
I never, and she's in the National Baseball Hall of Fame. But I was never on board with her because I just didn't connect with her enthusiasm wasn't there. I'll just say that.
Yeah.
Had nothing to do with anything else other than the enthusiasm at the ballpark. You expect the PA announcer to have a little bit of oomph, a little bit of gusto, and there just wasn't a whole lot there with Sherry Davis. Did a great job. But then when Renel came in, I go, interesting. Let's see how this goes. And then, God, I think it was the first game. You could hear her over the TV, over the speakers and everything. And I thought, man, she is fantastic. But
Yeah.
again, we knew where she came from, so that was totally different. But yeah, it's man, what a travesty to and again, they talked about how they tried to negotiate and they had extensive negotiations. You and I aren't privy to that. Nobody's privy to that. Maybe she'll open up about it at some point. She's very classy, so I don't think she's going to, and that's totally her choice. But I, like you said, you listed off a few things. I'm sure the way that this organization has been going the last couple of years, it probably wasn't a Renel saying, trying to price them out of the market for PA announcers. They're going to name the booth after her. She's going to be an emeritus broadcaster, which basically means like you're a broadcaster forever.
Mhm.
Great. But, I'm not one to say just give somebody whatever they ask for. But when she has such positive feedback and you're so tone deaf as to what a PA announcer can do for the fans in the ballpark in terms of connection, in terms of, I mean, we're talking, we go back, like you said, go back to 2000. We got 3 World Series championships, all these retirement ceremonies. She emceed all of those. The Walk of Fame, the Wall of Fame, everything, just the reunion teams. She was there for all of that, and then just to have negotiations break off and say, well, sorry, we're going in a different direction. It's not acceptable. Twitter is blown up today, and rightfully so. I mean, the backlash is real, and it absolutely should be there.
The amount of money that this team has spent this year, I think, is third to only the Dodgers and the Phillies as far as how much money they have spent to bring in new players or re-sign players. Because I think most of Philly's money is tied into NOLA.
Mm-hmm.
So unless Renel was looking to be the Shohei Ohtani of PA announcers, which it was just surely not the case. You got to make this thing work. You paid Jock Peterson $20 some odd million last year to run half speed down the line on stuff. Like I know it's different. Like the economics of that stuff is different. The economics are even different from the broadcast team. And I'm not even
Mhm.
sure how that. I don't like that. Is the broadcast team, are they employees of the Giants? Or are they employees of the stations that they broadcast? I'm not exactly sure how that
They're
works.
employees of the Giants.
Okay, so very
Yeah, because
similarly
all of that
to
stuff
Renel
goes
then.
through Larry Bear. My understanding, everything I've read, all of that goes through Larry Bear because he's the CEO. Ownership obviously signs off on it, but I don't think I know everybody's blaming Charles Johnson today. And maybe there's some sort of direction from the top, but Charles Johnson's been with the team since 1992. He's been a part owner since 1992. So he's had a say in it. He had a say in the hiring of her as well. Um, I think what it comes down to is yeah, maybe she was trying to be the Shohei of PA announcers, but honestly, when it comes down to it, that's probably a drop in the bucket compared to the rest of your economics in the ballpark when it comes to day-to-day operations. Give her that money. And like I just said a little while ago, I'm not one to say give her that money, but she is a unique voice, a unique person in that position. And part of that ballpark and part of that ball game experience. And is anybody going to say, well, I'm not going to go now because Renell's not going to be there? I don't know.
Maybe.
Maybe. Yeah, maybe there's a protest. Maybe people go to less games than they were going to because of that. Um, but either way, I mean, Giants. I I don't know how they can not understand that they made a huge mistake with this.
Yeah. The last thing that I'll say on this is the one thing that they usually do well is they pay respect to the alumni, to the former players, Will Clark. That's the reason why we have this podcast, right? If the
Yeah,
Giants didn't do a good job of taking care of their own, and Will Clark was out there working in spring training for the Texas Rangers, this would be a different story. This would be a different pod. We probably wouldn't be doing this podcast, but
right.
they take care of their own. We've seen them bring Barry Bonds back into the fold these last few years. Like, he's embraced by this fan base. And now the team has actually been like, okay, like we don't have to, like, pretend that these things never happened under our watch.
Yeah.
Hunter Pence was at the Warriors game, and he's raising ruckus on the Warriors broadcast. And I was just thinking, like, Hunter Pence didn't even begin his career with the Giants, and yet this is who he believes is his home team, is the Giants. Kruk, Kipe, John Miller, Dave Fleming, Javier Lopez, just keeping this talent, these talented broadcasters. They could have said, hey, Dave Fleming, you're doing way too much golf and college basketball. You need to reel it in. And maybe they would lose Dave Fleming, right? Because Dave
Yeah,
Fleming's like,
absolutely.
okay, well, I'll go do these other things and I'll find a part-time baseball gig. John Miller has been with the team for a long time now. Again, like I said, Kruk and Kipe. Kruk and Kipe have actually been part of the Giants organization going all the way back to the early 80s. So they do a good job with this stuff. And here's the optics of this, right? African-American woman who is a pioneering voice, and all of a sudden she is a little bit uh just let go in a sense. I'm not saying race has anything to do with this. I would hope not. I guess race has something to do with a little bit of everything. But, like, let's say, why don't we take care of this pioneering voice and make sure that she goes out on her own terms, because you could have signed
Right.
her to like a 2 or 3 year deal and go, hey, we're thinking of something else, but we want you to always be a part of this. It is what the Warriors did with announcer Jim Barnett, who was the color commentator. I even had a conversation with him about this. He was like, yep, they're looking to get younger. They're looking to get a little bit hipper. And I am not that. I'm an old, aging ex NBA white guy. And I get it, but I still think I'm better at this job than anybody that they can bring in. And he is 100% correct, because I love the Warriors for bringing in Kalena, because Kalena is a former Warrior. I think Kalena is a cool dude. He's one of my friends, good friends. Uh, and they kept Jim Barnett on the radio. So knowing that they wanted the optics to change, they kept Jim Barnett on the radio. I guess there's not a second string PA announcer, but maybe she does half and you bring in somebody to do the other half and she's actually the mentor to this person. I don't know, there's so many different ways that you can think of this happening.
Yeah.
It's just like, come on, guys. Like this should be the easy negotiation. This should be the thing that you don't have to worry about because you have a stalwart in that position. It's like
Yeah.
something you shouldn't even lose sleep over. And it seems like they just bumbled this whole thing, unfortunately, which
And some of the stuff that I had read too almost made it sound like, she was negotiating to come back for next season. So maybe it was just a 1-year thing. And then maybe she was going to announce her retirement and kind of, have a farewell tour, which she is absolutely 100% owed, as much as any other person who's a part of the San Francisco Giants organization throughout the years, like Mike Murphy, any of the Giants broadcasters who announced retirement and then right off into the sunset, players for that matter too. And so I think that's the frustrating part. I think what you said is something that I hadn't really thought about most of the day, but it has been in the back of my mind that she's really not going out on her own terms. I know they said amicable, but maybe she is. Again, until she talks and does an interview and talks about this, and she may not, and again, her own right to do whatever she wants. But I absolutely love to hear from her and know kind of what the thoughts are on the process, because maybe that softens a little bit. Maybe she says, no guys, look, fans, I was going to head out anyways, and just couldn't quite come to terms. My heart wasn't going to be in it this season, so I wanted to kind of retire and walk away at this point. But we don't know. We don't know until we actually hear from Renel. So
I mean, Greg Johnson couldn't have taken a sliver of the amount of money that he was going to send to Donald Trump. Like dear God.
I know, man. I made the mistake of looking him up on Wikipedia today and looking at his, and then right there in your face is the political donations, and you're just like, fun.
Yeah.
Fun guy.
So my guess is we will not be done talking about Renel. Like you said, she's going to have some sort of statement. Maybe she will,
hopefully
say something that makes it seem like it was her decision. But from Ann Killian's article, it definitely seemed like it was not. Grant Brisbee also wrote a pretty good piece about it, just about how, again, this is sort of like something that shouldn't be very hard to figure out, and they just didn't figure it out. And then Andrew Baggerly just wrote two thoughts. One, Renel is cherished. And two, Giants fans have been begging for more continuity in the lineup, roster, etc. The team should have a bit more now, but nobody created more continuity with the ballpark experience than Renel, and apparently the Giants failed to value that. So here's what Giants, I'm just going to give you this free advice. You don't need to pay me for it. Giants brass, Giants organization, do not try and come out and say and give us reasons, right?
Yeah.
You can have your reasons. You can have your spreadsheets. You can, maybe you have a top 10 prospect PA announce list that you keep handy. We don't care. It just doesn't make sense. So
no, it doesn't. It doesn't make sense unless Renel says, I wanted it this way. I think that's the only way it would make sense. If she just said, my heart wasn't in it. It was time for me to step away.
Yes.
I want to do other things in my life, grandkids, this, that, whatever, again, at this point we're just speculating, but you're right. I don't give two craps about the spreadsheets and how much this is going to save the Giants in the long run, because her voice won't be on the PA system and over the speakers at the ballpark. When I go and you go and we go together in July, this will be my first time back since 2006, and I'm not going to hear her. And that's frustrating, because I have two teenage daughters who, hear her they've grown up listening to Giants games on the radio and on TV. So they know her voice, and to be in the ballpark and hear her voice like live right there, it would have been super awesome. But don't know, man. Frustrating, very frustrating.
All right, let's talk about more frustration. Unfortunately,
Excellent. Yeah, let's go.
I think we did a pretty good job covering the JD Davis Giants scenario from last week. The arbitration win by JD, the Giants then waiving him unconditionally, him getting what amounted to, I don't know, 1/7 of his salary or something like that, based off of termination pay. And you had this last week, but we didn't really discuss it. There's a clause that allows them to cut him if the actual arbitration goes to the trial. And the clause specifically states that it has to do with performance. And if you, I guess the question for me would be, what performance are we talking about? Are we talking about a specific time frame? Is it the 2023 performance? Is it the 2024 spring training performance? Like what defines performance? Because
Right.
if it is spring training performance, he was actually playing really well in spring training, so it wouldn't seem like he would qualify to be cut. If they're talking about 2023, I think some Giants fans would go, well, yeah, second half of 2023, this dude played poorly, but at the same time, he won the arbitration case. So I don't that's a confusing clause for me. And I'm not exactly sure that he qualified actually to be released.
Probably not. I was just trying to look up his stats with the A's to see if he's even played yet. Yeah, he's played in 2 games, and of course, he is 3 for 5 with a double, batting 600 with an OPS of 1.4. But yeah, I mean, when you look at the clause and you read it, God, I really hope he files a grievance. I hope the union agrees to file a grievance, and I hope he wins at this point. Because when you look at the letter of the agreement that was signed by both parties, MLBPA and the owners, when you look at that, it basically says, if you stink, we can cut you. But this arbitration was done based on last year's numbers. So that's, I think, where it gets tricky. Who is going to decide, like you were saying, is the arbitration decided on the numbers from last year? Yes. Was the cutting of JD Davis because of what he did in the second half of last year? And if it was, then why did you fight so hard to get him to arbitration, keep him, and even offer him arbitration? You don't have to offer him arbitration. You could trade him before you even offer him arbitration. And that way you don't have to deal with it, and the next team has to deal with it. But then when you look at the spring numbers and you go, man, he was batting 400 and had a couple of bombs and he was doing well and he was going to be their starting third baseman. And then Matt Chapman came in and now he was going to lose his job. But he was still there and still hitting well leading up to that, even though knowing that Matt Chapman was probably going to come in. So yeah, again, I kind of hope a grievance is filed so we can see where this goes. I think somebody owes him that money because he won that money in arbitration. I know it's a silly little loophole out on it. But the more you look at it, it's like, well, yeah, what do you base that on? Because if you make an agreement with somebody and then in spring training they hit 172 with three home runs and then you cut them, but the last season they hit 40 home runs. Hey, look at that. The last season they hit 40 home runs or 30 home runs, and then you cut them or do whatever else you have to do. Yeah, I don't know. It's tricky. It's just kind of a mess. It's unprecedented is what I can tell you, because there are no like basically case study that you can look at and say that this is how it's gone in the past. So this is probably what's going to happen. I don't know. At first, I was like, "Hey, you know what? It happens, big deal, whatever." But now I'm kind of pissed off about the whole thing. Feel bad for the guy, really, honestly, when it comes down to it. So it's not going to deter. We've figured that out. It's not going to deter free agents from coming to the Giants because when you sign as a free agent, you're not usually arbitration eligible. You don't have any arbitration years left. You're a free agent, so you're coming to the Giants on a free agent deal, like Haniger. I saw somebody say, "Well, why doesn't Haniger give his money back?" Well, that was a free agent
Yeah,
deal,
yeah.
but both parties agreed on a number, and he signed them. The Giants signed those checks for that money. Basically saying, we know what you did in the past and we hope you do the same thing. And that's what free agency is. A little different than arbitration and going forward and finding a replacement player to take your spot. So yeah, I don't know, man. It's going to be a weird one.
There are things that have happened that helped cause this scenario. One of which is these guys just not being signed until spring training already started.
Yeah, that's a problem.
Now, I'm not claiming collusion because there's so many things that would have to go into owners colluding against one particular agent. So I'm going to guess that Boris is maybe his idea of, it's kind of like the agent's idea of what is success and value versus like the analytical idea of what is success and value. Because again, I think it just looks poor that your NL Cy Young Award winner is unsigned, and one of the guys who is the reason for a World Series title is unsigned.
Right.
Those guys better be asking for like 1.5 times what the owners think that they're worth, because it just looks bad. The optics of the whole thing looks bad, and because I think owners are, I'm pro player rather than pro owner. I gotta think there's something going on. You can't call it collusion because there's things that have to happen in order for that to be collusion. But it does feel like some of these owners are like, "F this guy," like,
Yeah.
because how can Snell and Montgomery still not be signed?
Yeah, and that's but again, I think obviously he overplayed the market on those. He overplayed the market on pretty much every one of his free agents. We're still coming off of COVID years. We're still coming off of, and then we're also coming off of all this weird TV deal stuff. And I think Boris was kind of blind to all of that and just thought, "Hey, man, here's a National League Cy Young Award winner. We're going to get money for you." Well, I mean, the climate is not quite there. The climate was, if you're Shohei, you're getting 600 to 700 million. If you're anybody else, we don't know what you're getting. So the fact that you probably just have a lot of teams right now, not a lot of teams, but a couple of teams that are just kind of sitting, waiting and thinking, well, you know what? Maybe we sign Snell in late April and we prorate and we don't have to pay him that much money. We pay him less to help us kind of for the playoff push for the last couple months of the season. So maybe April, May, they sign him. At that point, do you have to sign him to a 2-year deal? Because I don't know if Snell would say, yeah, I'll pitch for, 3/4 of a season, and then I'll throw my hat back in the ring again. Although he may, you never know. I don't really know what the players are thinking. When you sign with Boris, you kind of have to be a special kind of person. You gotta know what you're getting into. But yeah, I like I said too, collusion. I think that takes a lot, because the Pittsburgh Pirates aren't in on this. They would never pay either of these guys that money, no matter what. So you're talking about like 7 or 8 owners.
The Oakland A's look at Blake Snell's contract and they're like, that's our entire payroll.
Yeah, exactly. That's our payroll for 5 years. So we could, yeah. So I think, you'd have to look at like 7 or 8 owners that are sitting there going, yeah, we're not going to pay that kind of money. And hey, let's stick it to Boris and show him what we're all about. Because Boris isn't going anywhere. That's the whole thing. And they've dealt with him before. The Giants dealt with Boris to get Jung-Hoo Lee earlier this season. They dealt with Boris last year, right? Mitch Haniger is a Boris guy. So they dealt with him. They dealt with him in the whole negotiation with Aaron Judge. So I think just the timing is just really, really bad for these guys because, again, you've got everything. You're still coming off of not full stadiums. You're still coming off of this weird TV deal stuff. There's so much still just kind of floating around out there. And when Boris has 4 or 5 guys looking at, like, at the beginning of the offseason, looking at all of them 7 to 10 year deals at, whatever, $200 to $700 million, I think a lot of teams were going, I mean, maybe we get one of these guys, but we're not signing 2 of these guys. So, yeah.
And I do also wonder because when the third wild card was added, the idea of more teams being available for a playoff run late, the chance to be in the postseason, and theoretically that would allow more teams to maybe take some chances at some higher price talent. But that does not seem like it happened. At least it hasn't happened, at least this year.
No.
And like you said, in the past, when you have guys like Correa getting big money and then hitting, 260 for the year, whatever he hit last year with no power, the wins are going to be there. I think Judge, at least for 3 or 4 years, is probably going to be a great player, and we'll see what happens after that. Trey Turner, he didn't have a fantastic year last year. He got a lot of money. So I do wonder if owners are reactive to how things happened last year. And they're like, oh, not enough wins last year on these long-term guys. And, or it's just like Blake Snell, people are seeing through a lot of what his numbers really mean. And same with Jordan Montgomery. And they're like, okay, like, yeah, he is a good pitcher, but he's not a great pitcher. He is worth $23 million, not $33 million. And it could also be that. I just find it so weird that the coverage of this stuff the onus is not on the owners to step up. Is it the luxury tax stuff? The onus is like, it's on Boris, essentially. He's asking for too much money or whatever it is. It's just interesting the way that this stuff is covered, I guess.
Yeah, you're right. And I think that's a problem too. Good players become fantastic, quote unquote, fantastic players when you're a Boris agent. I mean, these are, guys you have to have because Boris says you have to have them. So their price tag just goes up. So Jordan Montgomery with any other agent is probably signed by now to a 4-year deal, 5-year deal somewhere. But when Boris has his hooks in you and you're on board with what Boris is doing, then yeah. But I mean, ultimately the player makes the decision because he could fire you. And so if that player says, I want to be on a team before spring breaks camp, you bring me all the deals and then I'll figure it out. But what did they turn down? $120 million deal, Snell and Boris with the Yankees, and then Chapman had a $100 million deal, I think, with the Toronto Blue Jays at the beginning of free agency, and they turned that down too. And here they are. So,
all right, before we get into the last part, which is just a quick look at how the roster is looking right now, we'll have a better outlook on that this time next week. But also next week, we're going to do a short podcast, a short show on Monday in this normal time slot because we need to save some stuff up for Bleacher Report. We're going to do a short show on Bleacher Report at noon Pacific, 3 p.m. Eastern on Tuesday. So you'll see us be on their app. We're going to go for half an hour. And I think the idea is just, heading into the season, what is the outlook for the team? So if you want to check us out on Bleacher Report, just make sure you have their app and follow the Giants. And I think there's alerts and stuff and notifications of when we will go live over there. But that is a week from tomorrow. So we'll mention this next week as well. For our drink, now that I'm not buying as much actual alcohol and liquor as I was, because we've pulled way back as a household on our drinking. My wife's completely, so I'm drinking during the show with Brad, and then may have like 1 or 2 drinks for the rest of the week. So we've really cut back. So
I know when we can't do the show, you're like, man, that's my night to drink. What am I going to do now? I think one night you're like, I'm just going to have a drink anyways.
So instead of buying actual alcohol, we're looking for like just other kind of like fun mocktail-y stuff. And I found this at Whole Foods today. It is called Hella. Now, it obviously
So it's East Bay?
has to be a Bay Area thing if it's called Hella. It is bitters and soda. And I'll turn around here. Here's what the can looks like. Bitters and soda.
That's a very 1940s, 1950s drink, is bitters, soda, and scotch. That was kind of a big deal back then. Yeah.
So I decided that I bought it because I just wanted to try it. We're drinking a lot of hop water that I told you about. And so this is just kind of interesting. There's another gin and tonic with just tonic water, no gin in it, but it tastes like a G&T. I like that. But I decided to put a little tequila, a little Terramana in with the bitters and soda, and just to try it out, just try a mix and see what it is. If you enjoy bitters, I think you would enjoy it. It's again, it's like one of those things where in my head it tastes a certain way, and then when I actually drink it, it tastes a little bit different. But it's going to be one of those drinks that, as I get a little bit more used to the bitters taste, because unless you're drinking mixed drinks where they put bitters in, I don't really have them that much. But we have tried them, so I think it's a unique taste with the tequila and the bitters. It was actually one of the cocktails that was on the can. The only thing I didn't add was, or that I wanted to add that I forgot, was a little bit of lemon. If I would have added a little bit of lemon juice, it would have. I wanted to see how that was with it. But tequila, Terramana, Hella, bitters, and soda, and that's my drink for today.
Nice. I like that. I like that little mix. I went with something I've never had before. Tried a little sip the other night, and I thought it was really good. Little Jim Beam double oak twice barreled. So they call this the Jim Beam Black Label. I think there's one actually called Jim Beam Black, but this is the Jim Beam Black Label double oak twice barrel. It is 100 proof, so 50% alcohol. It's good. It's not something. No, I'm sorry, 43% alcohol, so 86 proofs. It's a little bit lighter. It's very meaty, very woody, strong. Some reviews I read, a lot of people said, "Oh, it's a great mixer. Put it in Coke, put it in ginger ale." But I always like to try this type of stuff first, and it's a $20 bottle. I had a $3 off coupon, so it was $20. So that is the reason I don't think I'll mix it. I mean, if I'm going to mix stuff, I'm going to get more like a $12, $11 bottle, like Evan Williams or something like that. Even though I like to drink Evan Williams straight, but it's good. It's a little bit heated because of the oak, but not high on alcohol. Next week, because it's our short little season preview show, because after that, heck, we're into the season. I picked this guy up. Actually, a neighbor picked it up for me.
Oh, yeah, you showed me this.
Some Colonel E.H. Taylor, which is this camera's not picking it up, but this is the bottled and bond small batch. I was looking online again today. You're looking at like some places have this for like $200.
It's crazy.
Because of the distribution, it's only distributed in pockets. But it showed up in our local Winco, which is a large supermarket, for the retail price of $43.99.
Wow!
So with tax, it was like close to $50.
That's awesome.
So yeah, so my neighbor grabbed me one. His bourbon collection is ridiculous. I got to take a picture for you next time I'm over there. But the kids babysit, so I walk over there with the kids sometimes, and they babysit their kids. So I'll take a picture. He's got some stuff that I've never even seen before or even heard of. So fantastic. So I'm going to bust that out this weekend to give it a shot. I'm going to try it with probably this album, Little Sinatra. She Shot Me Down. Just kind of get used to it, and then I'll have it for our season preview show on Monday.
By the way,
Yeah.
the last time I did have a drink before today, and it was for a specific occasion, the Evans League fantasy draft.
Yes, there you go. I was still sick. I didn't have anything to drink that night. I felt bad.
So what do you think about your team?
I'm frustrated with my team already. I went in on closers, so I got Juan Duran from Minnesota who tweaked his oblique on Saturday. So pitchers with oblique injuries, I don't know how long that's going to be. I grabbed Kenley Jansen because I thought here's 30 plus 30 saves. That's 60 saves right there. If I can get 80 saves, I was kind of crunching the numbers. If I can get 80 saves, then I'm looking good on the pitching side of things. And Jansen has a bad lower back, but he's also 36 years old. So I don't know why I did that. I don't know why, but I think offense wise, I'm feeling really, really good. I got a good mix of home runs, stolen bases, and some decent average. So, and starting pitching looking pretty solid. Although here's my problem. I didn't even think about this. I've got both San Diego starters going in Korea against the Dodgers. I mean, what was I thinking? So my first two pitchers of the season are Yu Darvish and Joe Musgrove going against the Dodgers in Korea. Not on their body clocks. I mean, they're on totally different body clocks. So I don't know how that's going to go. How do you feel about your team?
Well, my keepers were on the bad side because I didn't really have. I had one standout keeper who, I mean, he's not the best fantasy. He's not as good of a fantasy baseball player as he is a real baseball player in Logan Webb. But Juan Soto, I'd kept him too long, so I had to give him up. And so my keepers were like strategic, like, oh, Nico Horner had like 45 stolen bases last year. Might as well keep him because that's on the high end, and just guys like that. So my draft picks that I had to pass by were all like in like the 5th round.
Oh yeah. My top pick was in the 3rd round because I kept.
You had really good keepers, by the way.
Yeah, I had Acuna Jr. and Corbin Carroll were my first 2-round keeper picks. Then I had an open 3rd round slot, so I took Luis Castillo, and then I had Gunnar Henderson and Ellie De La Cruz as my other keepers. But then after that, it was just kind of like filling in the gaps. I got Jazz. I don't have any. Oh yeah, I do have one giant. I have Kyle Harrison.
And I saw you picked him up late. Yeah,
got him in the late rounds. I thought, well, you know what? If he doesn't pitch an entire season because of pitch limitation, innings limitations, at least I'm hoping to get some strikeouts and some decent ERA out of him, eat up some innings, because we do have an innings limit in our league. So if you can get, some quality innings, that's what counts. If you're fighting to, like I did last year, I had to fight to just stream pitchers at the end of the season, and then you're like, you don't know what you're going to get because you're facing 30-man rosters and pitchers that are unproven, and it's kind of a mess. So I thought maybe if I can get some stuff early in the season this year.
Streaming pitchers for me is where I kind of give up. I'm just like, I don't like it. Like, not that I can't do it. I just don't like the idea. Like, that's just not fantasy baseball to me.
Yeah.
It makes your draft like worthless, and
exactly.
It's all about keeping on the day, and just utilizing and taking advantage of the free agents and stuff. So
I've thought about capping free agent moves in our league, but then I think Harveen would revolt.
Well, yeah, like I looked at our records last year, and it was like the person who had the most moves was like 4th or something. So
yeah, exactly. So moves don't really amount to who's going to win or not. Do you have any Giants? Did you get any Giants?
I don't think I do. I did name my team after the Giants.
Yes, I like that.
You keep your team name pretty much the same.
I try
year after year. And I like to change mine up. Actually, other than Webb, obviously I kept Webb, but I don't have anyone other than Webb. So I changed my team name to Bo Mel and the Get Fresh Crew.
That's fantastic. I do change my football name almost yearly, but baseball, stick with the tried and true Micro Brew Crew. Just kind of that's me in a nutshell. So I thought I'll just keep going with that. I haven't won in many years, so maybe I need to change.
All right, let's look at a couple of quick things before we get out of here. I just wanted to quickly go through Baggs' article on the roster. So he broke it out and he basically said, look, like this is going to change. Like last year, the Giants, had a specific squad that they were going to take to New York. And then all of a sudden,
We have breaking news.
uh-oh.
Blake Snell is signing a 2-year, $62 million deal with the Giants.
Get out of here.
That is just reported by Underdog MLB, and they're usually the first on this stuff.
Okay.
So there we have it. There we have it.
I just said get out of here as if like I was upset at you or something.
2 years, $62 million. I would imagine that's a 2-year with a 1-year opt-out.
Yeah, and I did see that Alex Pavlovich retweeted it. He retweeted actually John Heyman's specific
here
news.
We go.
Well, now you really see what you got in your two big starters, and you hope Kyle Harrison. You know what? Let's forget this roster talk. Let's say
we gotta switch gears now.
Next week.
This is happening.
Okay, so I'd asked you maybe a couple weeks ago what you thought about Snell, and you were pretty much okay with not bringing him in, and it was because of the money. Now on a 2-year deal, which may or may not be a 1 year and an opt out. Oh yeah, it is. There is an opt out. As a 1 year thing, my point was that if you have a team that you think can compete, Blake Snell for 1 year, it's just 1 year of money.
Right.
And it's not like you're signing him up for 5 years and would we do it? And I think I was for it. Now, to your point earlier, actually, we've talked about this before where you actually texted this to me. He does leave a lot to be desired, and sort of the good things that Logan Webb does are not the good things that Blake Snell does. He's going to walk a lot of batters, high pitch count. He's not going to go deep into games. He's going to be pretty electric when his stuff is on, high strikeout numbers. But at the same time, the expectation may be, I thought this guy's the Cy Young Award winner. It's not the same as when, Roger Clemens and Dave Stewart were winning Cy Young Awards and having like 10 complete games a year. It's a much different way that he throws. Give me your quick, like off the cuff, reactive thoughts on him being here for 1 year.
I mean, it's going to be a boost. Obviously, it's going to be a boost to attendance. It's going to be a boost to morale for Giants fans, especially the news that Alex Cobb might even start the season with the big club and not in a rehab assignment.
Wow.
Kind of seems like he's even getting closer and closer to maybe missing a start. And since they open with one off day in the first week of the season, that may not even be truly a missed start. So if you're now lining up Webb, because Webb's your number one. Webb is it doesn't matter who comes in. Webb is going to be your ace. And he's earned that, and he's the homegrown talent, and he's number 2 in Cy Young Award voting last season. So now the Giants have number 1 and number 2 from last season. So you're going to go Webb, you're going to go Snell, maybe in the 2 slot if he's ready to go. But Kyle Harrison's been kind of working up to that 2 slot. So maybe you're going to see Webb, Harrison, Snell, and then Cobb. That's a pretty nasty 1 through 4. And then if you get Robbie Ray back to being Robbie Ray in July, now you've got a really nasty 5-man rotation going the second half of the season. So if you didn't think the Giants were serious about trying to make the playoffs, this should tell you right here that this is it. I mean, 1-year rental maybe for him and Chapman, to show what they've got and to try to push the Giants into the playoffs. Going to be some pretty crazy, amazing stuff going forward.
So we open the show talking about how poor the Giants are, just missing some of the easy stuff.
Yeah.
And at the same time, I think you have to give them a ton of credit for how this offseason has played out. As it turns out, Aaron Judge and Shohei just did not want to play for us. That is how that thing worked. Why?
Yep.
We'll have to rebuild and figure out and then test the waters in a few years to see if we can get the big fish.
Sure. Next year, Soto.
Next year is Soto. Yes, that would be a game changer.
Yeah.
But when it comes to sort of the next tier of guys, you got Jung-Hoo Lee, Blake Snell. Like that is pretty darn good work there. And that now we got to figure out if Robbie Ray is going to come back. I mean, Robbie Ray's a free agent, but they did trade him with the idea that, Mitch Haniger was just not going to really do too much on this team. So,
right.
It is, you got to tip your hat to Farhan making chicken salad out of chicken excrement when Shohei and Yoshinobu Yamamoto basically tell us, no, we're good. And you pivot and you move on, and they did. I think they've done a pretty good job. Look, Matt Chapman and Snell, they're not going to be around for a long time. So what you would hope is that while you bring in these guys to kind of breathe some fresh air into the franchise, that you're getting Luciano, you're getting Matos, you're getting Harrison, you're getting all of these guys, ready to go. So by the time Chapman and Snell, and maybe they do come back for a year or not, but you want the franchise to be, once you elevate sort of the visibility and all the kudos and all of that stuff that comes from the national media. And when all that happens, you don't want those guys leaving to all of a sudden send you back down. You want the younger players to be there. And also then you go, hey, we're going to get Juan Soto. Like that whole thing is how it works. So for 1 year, we're going for it. And I love it. I just hope this is not like the only year. And then like for the next 2 years, they're going to be bad again.
Yeah. It's tough to go all in baseball. We've seen it before. I mean, the Marlins have done it twice, right?
Yeah.
I mean, so we've seen the all-in work for baseball before, but it doesn't work very often. It works almost like the Phillies 2 years ago. We were just talking about this earlier when you were talking about having more playoff teams, and we were hoping at the trade deadline this would spur more craziness. Well, 2 years ago, the Phillies were on the outside looking in at a playoff spot when they just added another playoff spot, the number 6 spot, and then the Phillies went crazy at the trade deadline and then got into the playoffs and then went to the World Series where they eventually lost to the Astros. But still, for that fact, you can go all in, halfway through the season if you've got a team and you're winning. The Giants don't know what they have because you're coming off of last season where you were under 500. The season before you were exactly 500. You have a new manager, although Snell has played for Bob Melvin before, so the familiarity is there, which is nice. I'm sure that was probably part of him coming to the Giants. I'm sure the $62 million was another part of it. But when you look at that and you say, okay, what do the Giants have? Are they going all in? We don't know 100% yet, but at least they're trying. At least they're trying with going and getting Chapman and going and getting Snell and Jung-Hoo Lee. I mean, this is going to be an exciting team. This is going to be more exciting than you remember the last couple of years, Giants fans. I guarantee you that. It's I've already got goosebumps thinking of the starting rotation halfway through the season and what it could be like. So exciting times.
Yeah. And
celebrate.
And you keep saying that you've been really, really on the Cobb thing about, he's ahead of schedule. maybe they can actually dial him back a little bit and make
Yeah,
sure that he is good,
sure.
because you have that extra starter now, and you go, okay, maybe we'll go through a couple rotations and then we'll worry about it. But or if he is ready, then he just comes in as the 4, and then you just got to worry about that 5 spot. So
Yeah. Yeah,
that
that's going to be the hard part because again, you're still talking about Mason Black. You're still talking about um, Keaton Wynn, because Tristan Beck is
got
I
hurt.
don't know, 3 months maybe. It's going to be a little while, but yeah, I mean, you're still talking about a younger portion of the rotation, but now you don't have to rely on them.
I mean, and let's not forget Jordan Hicks, of course.
Yeah, and Jordan Hicks. I mean, I left him out. So yeah, I mean, when Robbie Ray comes back, you're looking at a 6-man rotation,
Yep.
and that could benefit you down the stretch as well.
Especially with Harrison not throwing a lot of innings. Snell doesn't throw a lot of innings. You could
Ray
sneak in a
coming off
6th
of
guy.
Tommy John. I
Yeah.
mean, a lot of factors in that, and also it's going to be what is Jordan Hicks halfway through the season?
Sure.
Who is Jordan Hicks? What does he become at that point of the season? So, yeah, a lot of question marks, but the fallback, I think, the plan B now is not like everybody else's plan C or D. So I think
Right.
that's kind of where it is helpful.
All right. That is it. I'm actually happy that we didn't have to look at the roster, because we could just look at that next week.
Yeah, well, yeah, we got all next week. Now we get to just revel in the Blake Snell. I see, and this season I don't have MLB Network, so I don't know how I'm gonna how I'm gonna have this broken down for me.
Oh, all right. So we'll be back on Monday, and then again, like we said, we're going to be doing some stuff with Bleacher Report on Tuesday, heading into the season next week. Holy Toledo!
Jeez, man.
Bill
Not,
King.
I mean, technically this week, if you want to look at it.
Yeah,
that
for
way.
us, I'm talking about for us.
Yeah,
But yeah,
we don't.
there will
count the
be
Dodgers.
actual baseball, and I will say that on my fantasy team, I was hoping and begging and pleading that somebody would either take the hitter version of Shohei or leave me one of the players I would have taken ahead of Shohei. And of course they didn't. So where I was in my spot in the draft, I had to take the designated hitter Shohei. So
Well,
the guy doesn't have to worry about pitching, right? He should be hitting
no,
like 50 bombs this year.
and he doesn't even have to play the field.
Yeah, exactly.
So he's. I mean, one report today said he might play the field this season if he's cleared. If I have that kind of investment and I'm the Dodgers, I don't put him in the outfield for anything. There's no reason. So
yeah, I don't think so either.
Yeah.
That's why the DH is there. Extend the careers.
Man. That's right.
All right. We will be back next week. We're going to throw some, we'll have some content, BSPN_media on Instagram. We're experimenting with some templates, and YouTube. We are going to put up 2 videos this week from this podcast, one talking about Renel, and then our conversation about Blake Snell. So if you didn't hear the whole thing, or you like smaller bits, we're going to put those up as well. So for Brad, I am Double G. We will see you when we see you. Peace out.
Peace.